In 1965, a Hollywood producer named Burt Sugarman was flipping through the March issue of Road and Track when something caught his eye. It was a photo of a sleek Italian concept car, the Ghia G230S. Right away, he had an idea. What if this stylish Italian design could be paired with a strong American engine? Sugarman was not a car builder, but he had the money and the drive to bring it to life. His idea led to the creation of one of the rarest and oddest Italian-American cars of the 1960s, the Ghia 450 SS. Only 52 were ever made, and the story behind them is a strange mix of Hollywood dreams, Italian craftsmanship, and Detroit muscle. Burt Sugarman went to Carrozzeria Ghia, the famous Italian design house based in Turin. He asked them to build a real production version of the G230S. The result was the Ghia 450 SS, first shown to the public in 1966 at the Turin International Auto Show. The design was originally done by Sergio Sartorelli, though Giorgetto Giugiaro, who had recently joined Ghia, tweaked some parts, like the grille and dashboard. The car was built on a custom ladder frame with a semi-monocoque steel body. Although some people think it was based on the Plymouth Barracuda, the Ghia 450 SS had its own chassis and layout. Still, it did borrow parts from Chrysler. Under the hood was a 4.5-liter Chrysler Commando V8 engine, also known as the 273 cubic inch engine. It made 238 horsepower at 5,200 revolutions per minute and 280 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 revolutions per minute. Buyers could choose either a 3-speed torque-flight automatic transmission or a 4-speed manual, though most cars came with the automatic. The suspension used front torsion bars and rear leaf springs. Braking was handled by disc brakes in the front and drum brakes in the rear. The car measured 178 inches long, 68.9 inches wide, and 51.2 inches tall, with a wheelbase of 98.1 inches. It weighed about 2,822 pounds and had a top speed of around 124 miles per hour. Each Ghia 450 SS was hand-built in Italy and then shipped to the United States, where it was sold through Ghia of America. The car cost around $13,100, which was very high at the time. Optional features included air conditioning for $700 and a removable hardtop for $600. Inside, it had stylish Eames-style bucket seats and copper-trimmed gauges. Each car had a small gold plaque on the glove box that read, "Specially built for," followed by the owner's name. The car attracted some famous owners, including Johnny Carson and Wilt Chamberlain. But with its high price and limited promotion, only 52 units were ever made. Today, about 26 are still known to exist. Some have sold at auctions for over $180,000. The Ghia 450 SS may not have been a big success, but it sure knew how to make an entrance and leave quietly. In the late 1980s, while most people in Australia were thinking about Ford Falcons and Holden Commodores, a small group of dreamers decided to do something very different. They wanted to build a car that could go head-to-head with Ferrari and Lamborghini, but come from down under. It sounds like the start of a joke, but it was real. The car they created was called the Giocattolo Group B. It was loud, fast, expensive, and almost nobody remembers it today. But behind this forgotten car is a story full of ambition, strange decisions, and a V8 engine that roared like it had something to prove. The Giocattolo Group B was born in 1986. It was the brainchild of Paul Halstead, a businessman and car enthusiast, and Barry Locke, a skilled engineer who had worked in Formula One. Together, they founded a company called Giocattolo Motori in Australia. Paul Halstead had a simple dream: create a high-performance sports car that combined Italian looks with Australian muscle. The name Giocattolo actually means toy in Italian, which probably says a lot about how Paul felt about cars. To start building this new car, they picked the Alfa Romeo Sprint as the base. It was a small Italian coupe with sharp lines, and it looked sporty enough to serve as a good starting point. At first, they wanted to use the 2.5-liter V6 engine from Alfa Romeo and mount it in the middle of the car. That setup sounded fancy, but getting those engines proved to be too difficult and expensive. So they came up with a very different idea. They ditched the Italian V6 plan and went with a big Australian heart instead. The new engine was a 5.0-liter Holden V8, the same kind you might find in a loud muscle car. To make it even better, they had it tuned by Tom Walkinshaw Racing, a group known for their work with race cars. The engine now made about 295 horsepower and 500 newton meters of torque. That was a lot of power for a car that weighed only around 2,390 pounds. The result was a machine that could go from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 5.4 seconds and reach a top speed of 260 kilometers per hour. The rest of the car was just as interesting. It had a modified version of the Alfa Romeo Sprint's monocoque chassis. The body panels were made from Kevlar and carbon fiber. The suspension was inspired by the Lamborghini Countach and used a custom double wishbone setup. The brakes came from Brembo, and the car rode on Simmons alloy wheels, 15 inches up front and 15 inches in the rear, with wider tires in the back. Inside, it had leather Recaro seats and custom gauges. One funny detail was that every car came with a bottle of Bundaberg rum in the toolkit, as if the builders knew this car might cause stress at some point. But while the car looked and sounded great, the business side was another story. Building a supercar in Australia in the 1980s was not cheap. They had to import complete Alfa Romeo Sprints because bare shells were not available. The ZF 5-speed manual transaxle they used was expensive. The car took a lot of time and labor to build. By 1989, after producing only 15 cars, Giocattolo Motori ran out of money and shut down. Out of the 15 cars built, 14 are still known to exist. One of them, car number 007, was destroyed in a crash at Eastern Creek Raceway in 2001. The driver, Todd Wilkes, died in the accident. That event became a sad part of the car's short story. Today, the Giocattolo Group B is rarely seen. It never became a big name, and most people have never even heard of it. But for the ones who know the story, it remains a strange and bold part of Australian car history. A car that was built with wild ideas, sharp tools, and probably just a little too much confidence. In 1972, something odd appeared at the Turin Motor Show in Italy. It looked like a spaceship on wheels, low, wide, and sharply angled like it was built for speed in a wind tunnel. People gathered around it, confused and curious. The nameplate read ESO Revolta Verdo. It was not from Ferrari or Lamborghini. It came from a company mostly known for building comfortable Grand Tourers, not wild mid-engine machines. The Verdo was meant to be the beginning of a bold new chapter for ESO Autoveicoli SPA. But like many wild ideas, this one did not go as planned. The Verdo was named after the town of Verdo in Italy, where ESO had just opened a new factory. The company was run by Piero Rivolta, the son of company founder Renzo Rivolta. Piero had taken control in the late 1960s and wanted to bring ESO into the future. Until then, the company had made front-engine cars like the ESO Grifo and the ESO Lele. They were fast, but they still felt like classic touring cars. Piero wanted something more radical. He wanted to go mid-engine just like the De Tomaso Pantera and the Lamborghini Miura. To build the Verdo, Piero called on some big names. He asked Ercole Spada to design the body. Spada had previously worked at Zagato and was known for clean, sharp shapes. For the engineering, he brought back Giotto Bizzarini, who had worked on earlier ESO cars and even the Ferrari 250 GTO. Bizzarini used a tubular steel chassis that came from the abandoned AMC AMX3 project, which he had also helped design. It was strong and light. The engine was American. Sitting in the middle of the car was a 5.7-liter Ford 351 Cleveland V8. It made 325 horsepower at 5,800 revolutions per minute and 337 pound-feet of torque at 3,800 revolutions per minute. A ZF 5-speed manual gearbox sent power to the rear wheels. The body was made from fiberglass and bonded directly to the chassis, which helped keep the weight down to about 2,205 pounds. The suspension used double wishbones at all four corners. It had pop-up headlights, large rear air vents, and a very low roofline, just 41.3 inches high. Even though it looked ready for production, the ESO Revolta Verdo never made it past the prototype stage. The oil crisis hit the world in 1973, and sports car companies began to struggle. ESO was sold to Dr. Ivo Pera, who was not interested in continuing the project. By 1974, ESO filed for bankruptcy. The one and only Verdo was left behind in bad shape. Years later, Piero Rivolta found the car and had it restored. Today, the only Verdo ever made is displayed at the Sarasota Classic Car Museum in Florida. It stands as a strange but important piece of ESO's history, one where a small company briefly dreamed of taking on giants. And like most forgotten ideas, it just needed a little more luck and maybe a better time to be born. In 2006, at the British International Motor Show, a new supercar appeared that almost no one had heard of. It was not from Italy, not from Germany, not even from the United States. It came from Bolton, a town in England better known for tea and textiles than high-speed cars. This car was called the Keading TKR. Built by a man named Anthony Keading, the TKR was not just aiming to be fast, it wanted to be the fastest. And surprisingly, for a short moment, it nearly was. Anthony Keading started his journey in 1996 when he formed Barabbas Sports Cars. The name later changed to Keading Supercars. His dream was to build British supercars that could compete with the best. The company's first major model was the TKR. This car was shown for the first time in 2006 under the name Barabbas TKR. It looked wild, with a body shaped for speed. The front design was inspired by the Celine S7, while the rear reminded people of the Pagani Zonda. The car had a full carbon fiber body and chassis, helping it stay light, around 2,620 pounds. Under the rear hood was a monster engine. It used a 7.0-liter twin-turbocharged V8 based on the General Motors LS7. This setup produced a claimed 2,002 horsepower at 6,000 revolutions per minute and 1,980 pound-feet of torque. All of that power was sent to the rear wheels using a 5-speed manual transmission. The chassis was made with a carbon fiber monocoque design, something usually found in race cars. Keading said the car could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 2.0 seconds and reach a top speed of over 300 miles per hour. That is faster than a jet at takeoff, but there was a catch. In October 2009 at El Mirage Dry Lake in California, the Keading TKR reportedly hit 260.1 miles per hour. That would have made it the fastest production car in the world at that time, beating the SSC Ultimate Aero TT. But the run was not recorded with proper timing equipment and there was no return run. Because of that, Guinness World Records did not count it. Also, the car was not yet available for sale to the public, so it remained more of a claim than a fact. Inside, the TKR had leather, suede, brushed aluminum, and even a video screen instead of a rear-view mirror. Keading Supercars had big goals. They planned to build 300 to 400 cars over 3 years. But things did not go as planned. The company made a few other models like the SKR, ZKR, and the Bolt, but none reached mass production. In 2021, Keading Supercars was officially shut down. The TKR still remains an odd part of supercar history. A car from Bolton, shaped like a Celine, powered like a monster, and nearly the fastest car on Earth. It tried to break records and instead broke expectations. Not many people remember it, but those who do still raise an eyebrow when they hear Keading TKR. Probably because they are still trying to figure out how a car like that ever existed in the first place. Some cars roar into history. Others quietly roll in, confuse everyone, and vanish before most people notice. But then, there are cars like the Gordon-Keeble GK1, a car with an American engine, an Italian-designed body, and a British-built chassis. It had the badge of a tortoise, looked like a jet, and sounded like a muscle car. It came from nowhere, turned heads, and then almost disappeared. But the story behind it is anything but boring. The Gordon-Keeble GK1 began life in 1959. John Gordon, who had worked with the British company Peerless, met up with an engineer named Jim Keeble. Both of them had an idea. Take the big, powerful V8 engine from a Chevrolet Corvette and fit it into a lightweight British chassis. Their first experiment was done using a Peerless frame. The result was called the Gordon GT. It was loud, fast, and different. The prototype gained enough attention that they decided to go further and make a proper car from scratch. They started by building a brand new chassis using square tube steel. It had independent suspension in the front and disc brakes on all four wheels, which was still rare at that time. But they needed a proper body to go on top. So they sent the rolling chassis to Turin, Italy, where a young designer named Giorgetto Giugiaro was working for Bertone. He shaped the body using steel panels and gave it a clean, low look, with 4 small headlights that were slightly angled. The car looked sharp and modern for 1960. The prototype was shown at the 1960 Geneva Motor Show and got a positive reaction. Chevrolet was impressed too. Important people like Ed Cole and Zora Arkus Duntov from Chevrolet agreed to supply the American engines and transmissions for the project. Things were moving fast. Production of the new car, now named Gordon-Keeble GK1, began in 1964. They set up shop at Eastleigh Aerodrome in Hampshire, England, a site that used to prepare Supermarine Spitfires during World War II. But there was one big change before production began. To save weight and cut costs, they dropped the steel body and replaced it with a fiberglass one. Williams and Pritchard handled the fiberglass work. That kept the shape mostly the same, but now it was easier to build and lighter. Under the hood, the GK1 had a 5.4-liter Chevrolet V8 engine. This was the same 327 cubic inch engine used in the Corvette. It made about 300 horsepower and 360 pound-feet of torque. The power went through a 4-speed Warner T10 manual gearbox to the rear wheels. The car could hit 60 miles per hour in just 6 seconds and had a top speed of 145 miles per hour. That made it one of the fastest 4-seat Grand Tourers of its time. The GK1's frame was made of steel tubing, while the suspension had independent wishbones in the front and a Dedion axle in the rear. Brakes were disc all-around made by Girling. The wheelbase measured 102 inches. The car was about 184 inches long and weighed somewhere around 2,900 to 3,100 pounds, depending on equipment. Inside, it had aircraft-inspired touches like toggle switches, white-on-black gauges, and quilted plastic that looked like luxury jet interiors. Now, for the strangest part, the badge. During an early photo shoot, someone's pet tortoise walked into the shot and climbed up on the hood. The team thought it was funny and made the tortoise the official logo. The result was a very fast car with a slow animal on the front. That kind of humor probably helped them stand out, even if sales did not. The price in 1964 was £2,798. It was cheaper than Ferraris and Aston Martins, but still expensive. That low price also cut into profits. Despite the car's abilities, the company ran into financial trouble quickly. In 1965, after only about 80 cars were made, Gordon-Keeble went bankrupt. A new group bought the rights and restarted production under the name Keeble Cars Limited. They managed to make 19 more cars before stopping for good in 1966. One last car was made in 1967 using leftover parts. The total number of Gordon-Keeble GK1 cars ever built was exactly 100. Today, more than 90 of those cars are still around. That is a surprisingly high number for such a rare car. Owners say they are tough and well built. The Gordon-Keeble Owners Club still exists and helps people take care of these unusual machines. In the end, the GK1 did not fail because it was bad. It failed because the world was not quite ready for it. A British-American-Italian mashup with a tortoise badge and a Corvette heart? That was always going to be a strange ride. But strange cars often leave the best stories behind.